well it is. Like, you don't want to be carrying costs and question marks when there's not that much money to go around. So get it sorted. And also, to be honest, I get the feeling like he wasn't that key in many of the big decisions anyway, because he had to find a way of getting the 12 Super League clubs to kind of come to some sort of consensus to get anything achieved. I do feel it's a bit harsh when Tom Andrews said hopefully someone with some drive for change comes in, because I don't think Robert Elston didn't want to make changes. It might not be the changes some of us wanted to see. Clearly there was a reluctance around expansion, which whilst if the bid was dog shit, then the bid was dog shit, but it kind of always came under that cloud, didn't it, under Elston's leadership around the expansion of the game with the North American angle. So there's that. I do think probably he wasn't a leader that took people with him, no matter what change he might have wanted to make. I think you can look at the pizza deal as that one. I think the private equity delivers on that one even more, because with the private equity stuff, why even get to the point of having that big finder's fee when there was always going to be some people objecting to it anyway? Where's the consensus being gathered, and where's the taking people, to make decisive action rather than waffling it along and then realising there's a cost to that people maybe didn't quite come to. But yeah, the pizza deal will be probably his real unfortunate legacy.
And I think there were some good moves that he made, like bringing in the city talking to do some of the sort of storytelling. I think that was the right foundation, but I just don't think it was ever followed through. There isn't one central thing you can really say that he achieved. And now, is that him and his management style, the team he brought in around him at quite considerable cost, or is that due to the governance structure that he was having to work in? I think it's a bit of both, but equally he knew that that's the structure he was going to be working in, so he could have worked around that. And there's ways to do things which he didn't need everybody to sit down and agree. And I think one of the big things is even calling it him and the executive chairman, because he didn't have a lot of executive authority. He was still beholden to an executive of with 13 other people. He had the RFL plus 12 clubs.
And it feels like the clubs, like several people involved in the clubs, have kind of come out and acknowledged that and almost said what a lot of us have said all along is it a bit of a poison chalice for him anyway? Because is he really going to get to drive what he wants to do with all these voices that he has to sort through? But when club chairmen have come out and said similar things, you're kind of thinking, well, why the fuck didn't you all figure that out?
Yeah, and I think there's some missed opportunities, definitely. I think, the Toronto thing, it could have been handled by both sides so much better. I think, we talked about the pizza deal and how that was expressed. I think even, the TV rights and trying to bring that along a bit more, and his whole thing of, judge me on the TV deal. I think people will now judge him on the TV deal, whatever gets left. And I think the private equity thing just seems to be a shambles from start to finish. If they were never going to sell, why did you why go down the level of getting to a point where you were paying people to find out? I mean, it's madness. And I think even some of I suppose the contrast, isn't it, is between him and Peter V'landys, who's in a similar but slightly different role, and he's got slightly more power and beef. But at the same time, V'landys has been able to railroad things through when everybody hasn't agreed, and they've kind of in the end gone, all right, maybe you were right about that.
Yeah, he's been a galvanising force, even if you don't necessarily agree all the time with his tactics or mannerisms or what have you.
So yeah, he's a businessman of a different age in some respects, but it's effective. And he is more of a leader ultimately, and I think that's Alston, for all his enthusiasm, isn't a full-on leader who's going to lead you anyway. He's a good manager, I think, but he's not necessarily a leader.
Yeah. I think it's totally fair, and I think some of the big things that have happened will all look pretty bad. I do think for so much of the strength that he brought in was like image and kind of engagement with the fans kind of stuff, like you say, with the City Talking stuff and the way that they got the TV show with that, the documentary they did with that, were all really good stuff. But then the communications broke down so many times with other bits, lots of almost trying to control the message too much to make it sound good, but they kind of went too far, talked about some things that didn't need talking about, like the pizza deal. It was actually not a bad deal, but because it was talked about like it was an amazing deal, it became a shit deal.
And all he had to say is, we've secured a deal worth, whatever it was worth, and then that would have been, fair enough. That's your job.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole bit where he read, that what was it, 2-month period nearly, towards the end of lockdown, where he just disappeared and kind of left this leadership vacuum of the game. But to be fair to him,
he did
Ralph
manage.
Rimmer then filled.
He managed he managed the logistics of Super League quite well through that period, but Rimmer got to stand out front and centre and kind of take credit for anything that went well.
And also, I mean, it's another thing is the is this sort of relationship with the media, and I know the Rugby League media is there's nothing like it anywhere, but at the same time, the fact that he was sort of, from some reports frosty, some reports downright hostile, the whole thing with Leakgate and all that stuff where he was getting annoyed. I mean, that was just, it was kind of like he'd, to use a football cliche, lost the dressing room.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think that those things pair. What about the successes of his tenure? I think I genuinely do think the rebrand of the Super League, where they've managed to get a more cohesive look, even getting some of the clubs to do individual rebrands themselves, that have made them have I would say a better digital impression, a better online impression, and just a better fit with the whole theme of things. I think that has to be classed as a success, but your average Rugby League fan does not give a shit about that. So, I don't massively
and that comes back to communication, doesn't it? It's saying, look, it's not about you, it's about getting new fans. We need, you're going to die in 20 years. We need more fans. This is how we're going to get them. Yeah,
or finding a nice way to say you're going to come anyway.
Exactly. We could put a picture of Wayne Godwin's face as our badge, and you would still be coming every week.
Yeah. So what he achieved wouldn't be a win within Rugby League, but I think it was a good thing. I also
it's interesting that the rebrand was what I was going to point to. That's the one thing I can think you can say. It's got that consistent colour, messaging hierarchy. It's quite slick in terms of that as a product.
All the teams kind of jumped on board as well with being consistent with their communications, which was really good.
Yeah, I think that is professionalised an element of the back office, which I think was needed, because, to be fair, when it was under the RFL, they had so many other things to do, they were never going to be able to give it that level of attention.
And I think another thing that was a big success, I went to the first event, which obviously couldn't take place last year, but the Super League Awards. Now, the way that they were presented and delivered in 2019, I thought was a huge step up on just your traditional kind of awards dinner. The having the show, having normal fans in attendance, I thought was a real shrewd move, and I'd like to see that continue in the future. And also, I suppose you've got to talk about some of the changes to how the game was played that a lot of people feel offered improvements. The shot clock when we had scrums was a big success. not so much when they were stood hovering around for 20 minutes to play a ball. But you know, everyone liked a lot of the rule changes when they were brought in, and I think it did speed the game up, but didn't speed it up excessively, and so, you know, I think there was successes there too. But ultimately, it's going to be, like I say, judged on a disappointed commercial income, even though that's been driven in a difficult time to achieve more income for the sport. We're not coming out of this period richer as a game, which is a shame, because we all kind of hoped that Elston could bring a level of professionalism, but also a level of connection to the right sort of money that kind of he had and TV and stuff like that. They had connections from his football days, and it's not.
Yeah,
not
we were led to expect something. He had a pedigree in rugby league. He had that sort of bit part working for PSG, so you had an idea that he was going to be an expansionist. It turned out very much not, and you had an idea as well from his background that he was going to be able to drive commercial revenue potentially quicker than previously. Possibly not. He was able to tidy things up, but
it came at a big cost, didn't it? Yeah,
exactly. It has come at quite a cost.
Okay, let's move on to some other news. Sean Wayne's first match as England head coach will be against the newly formed Combined Nations AllStars in Warrington, or the what should we call them? The Connas?
Yeah, or they're just the combis. I don't know.
In Warrington on Friday the 25th of June. The fixture will follow England women's game with Wales, with the wheelchair team also playing Wales in Sheffield the following day. The combined
Wales claiming, interestingly, it's just on Wales claiming that England didn't break up with them; they broke up with England. They chose not to have a fixture. Honestly, it wasn't that they weren't able to provide a strength of opposition. They chose, apparently, according to Wales Rugby League.
The Combined Nations All-Stars, or the Combis, will replace the Exiles, who played 4 matches from, well, not replace, but from 2011 to 2013. However, while the Exiles were selected from Southern Hemisphere imports, the All-Stars will draw from other home nations as well as France and Jamaica. The All-Stars will be coached by former Australia World Cup winning coach Tim Sheenius Sheens. We had some fan views in.
Yes, we did. Tom Andrews, politically correct name team. From what I know of Sheens, it will be a team full of Salford players.
Carsten said, the RFL doing their bit of raising the standard in Europe. They should be banned from the RLEF. Not playing the other European nations will only lower their level, as Australia has more and more good opponents in the Southern Hemisphere to help them grow and not kick their ass as much as they can.
And Aaron Smith said, this could be a real good challenge running up to the World Cup. When you start thinking about the players that could be in that team, makes you realise how many quality halfbacks are playing in Super League from overseas. This wouldn't be a bad team, but interesting to hear your selection and also the listeners' pick. So he's gone for Lachlan Coote at fullback, then Bevan French on the one wing, Wigan Grace on the other, Conrad Hurrell and Greg Inglis in the centres. Now that is a partnership that you'd pay to see. James Maloney and Aidan Caesar in the halves, David Fafita, Theo Farge, Paulie up front, Willie Isa, Zane Tetavano and Elijah Taylor in the back row, and then on the bench, Tommy Luluai, Sam Cassiano, Kevin Nagama and Tui Lolahea.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the size of his bench, but it's more about the fact that there's so many names that you could pick out to make an interesting and entertaining side, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I mean, you can go several ways. You could find some big beasts in there as well. There's plenty kicking about from.
Well, we'd be having
combined.
We'd be having what's his face from Wakefield in the side, wouldn't we?
Fafita or someone else?
No, oh God, his name's just escaped my head. Second rower who was in the Dream Team last year, we'd be having him. And he's a big lad. What I'm saying is there are other people that are probably not in the sort forwards wise.
Well, there's nobody French in that team, is there?
Other than Theo Farge, yeah, that is.
Theo Farge, yeah.
Slipped in at hooker, which I quite like the idea of getting him battered up in the middle.